all. Welcome to this edition of Yuva Manch. In this edition of Yuva Manch, we are going to discuss one of the most sensitive topic called women objectivity. So selecting this topic, keeping in mind the recent Chandigarh University incident that took place where a woman has been accused of leaking the objectionable videos of her fellow batchmates. Now, when we look at this whole episode of this Chandigarh University, one thing clearly reflects that we treat a woman in a dichotomous manner. In a one way, we revert them, and current Navratas are the current example of that. And on the other way, we objectify them as a sex objects or commodity. So in this edition, we are going to discuss this topic on a multidimensional perspective. And to do that honors, we have a guest. First is Swati Mantri ma'am. She is a PhD holder, a renowned sociologist, and an avid speaker on women's justice. And she's an alumni of IIT Delhi. On the other hand, we have Udit Seth sir. He's an alumni of University of Cambridge, High Court practitioner and advocate. So good morning, ma'am and sir. Let's begin this. Ma'am, my first question is to you is that there has been objectification of women and how it is manifested. What exactly is a woman objectification and how it is manifested into day-to-day life from a woman's perspective?
So objectification of women, right? Very pertinent topic. First of all, thanks for having me here for this discussion. And I welcome the co-panelists as well here. So what is objectification of women? It cannot be defined like, it's not like a one-line definition that you can give. But it's definitely when an individual is viewed through a certain lens for achieving certain measures. It could be voyeurism, it could be plain pleasure driven. It could be plain insinuating. It could be a combination of all of these factors. So women objectification is of course understood as with negative connotations, right? And when you simply reduce an individual's personality, an individual's appearance, an individual's identity on the basis of how that individual is perceived or comes across on various parameters, it could be the way that individual dresses up, it could be the way that individual talks, on various indices of one's personality and identity, right? So that is objectification, right? Where you just subtract all the other elements that an individual might have or recognize with or acknowledge as a part of the identity, but you reduce it to probably one or two elements, and then you treat or you react to that individual through those elements. Yeah.
Is that something that is manifested in day-to-day life? Like, for example, social media, or when we can say cinema, that's been women being
all around us. It's all around us. And I would like to kind of, although we are talking about women objectification in particular, but I would like to say that objectification is happening irrespective of gender, irrespective of one's sex, right? And we do know that sex and gender are two different terms. I would not go into the understanding of that though. But yes, it's happening on social media. It's happening through those frivolous, the casual WhatsApp messages that's been forwarded in family groups, in friends groups, without understanding the ramifications, without really understanding the meanings or the influence it could happen on, say, a layperson, right? Who's not even thinking about it deeply, who doesn't even understand what objectification could result in, or what really the process of objectification entail, right? It's across, so for instance, in India, in Bollywood, let's just talk about Bollywood. And that's like such a hot topic, right? Where people, it's been going on since, I don't know, it's quite a dated topic, but again, a very hot one and a very interesting and important one to address and acknowledge. The way the videos are shot, the music videos, whether the rap industry, whether the folk music, whether it's mainstream cinema, and how a particular gender is showcased on that platform. What is the meaning that let's again say specifically the youth getting out of it? Like, young impressionable minds. So it's everywhere. The way you address your friends, the way you see another person when they walk into a room, the way you see somebody's reaction, say on a social media post, and suddenly let's say a Facebook debate is going on, right? A very harmless debate is going on a certain issue, on a certain music video. And suddenly it takes right or left absolute U-turn direction towards a particular commenter. And if that commenter happens to be, say, a woman, and then you start commenting on whether, the other debaters start talking about how that woman is taking that video, and etc., etc. So it could spiral into unknown and various directions. So yeah, it's happening across everywhere. People think it's harmless and it might not be leading to anything serious without any serious implications. But eventually, once you discover, once you actually, in retrospect, when you think, it is a series of events that leads to a particular objectification, and that too in a very harmful manner. Yeah.
Exactly, points noted now. Sir, my question is to you, sir. That this woman in Chandigarh University, she claimed that she has been blackmailed by her boyfriend to leak those objectionable videos. Will it be considered as a sextortion? Is that the exact definition of sextortion is?
See, I was waiting for you to address the whole Chandigarh issue, because
Okay.
for the purposes of this talk and for the purposes of our discussion today, we are not here to examine, or we're not here to put people on trial just to ascertain what happened, what did not happen, right? We are sticking to the broad facts, what we have before us, that videos were made, videos were leaked. There are people on different sides of the corner making different allegations, different statements. But one fact which is settled is that yes, there were certain pictures taken, unsolicited pictures taken without the permission, without the consent of the women, right? And as Swatiji was pointing out, I really don't think any person, woman or man, would allow taking such pictures. Coming to your question, yes, plainly, the simple act of one person taking unsolicited pictures of another person and threatening a person for certain favors as a matter of protection from releasing those pictures, on the face of it, yes, it is blackmailing. It is absolutely blackmailing, and there's no second thought about it. The question is, how does one tackle these kind of questions? So yes, I just repeat myself that we're not going into the fact-finding mission right now. Let's leave that job for the investigators.
But sir, is the question exactly, is it punishable in IPC?
Oh
For being
yes,
sextortion?
yes,
It
yes,
is.
absolutely, yes.
Under which act, sir? Probably. Can you please just elaborate on that?
So see, we have so many legislations in the country which protect such an act, right? Of course, we don't have a specific legislation dealing with the word sextortion, right?
Exactly, sir.
We don't have a specific legislation dealing with the word sextortion, but towards the end of the day, what does sextortion mean? Sextortion is nothing but an amalgamation of sex and extortion. The underlying activity is that yes, a person was videos or pictures were taken of a person in the person's private moment. It was unsolicited. The person took those pictures, and now the person is blackmailing that, Ari, listen, if you don't give me some money, for example, or if you do not give me some sexual favor, or if you do not give me some favor of any sort whatsoever, consequences will follow. And on most occasions, the consequences is threat, that these pictures will be released to your parents, or these pictures or videos will be released in social media. Right? Now, we have several legislations which take into account such an activity. And we don't have one piece of legislation which covers everything. It depends on circumstance. For example, if you have such an activity which is happening in your workplace, then you have Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. There's a regime, there are steps to be followed when such an activity is taking place, and consequences will follow. We also have Information Technology Act, right, which prohibits dissemination of such things. It tells if such a dissemination is happening, what should a person do? Go to the police. Police will take its own turn. We also have Indian Penal Code, which safeguards the modesty of a woman. Right? If a woman is projected in a poor manner, in the manner in which we are discussing right now, which affects the dignity of women, consequences will follow. Most importantly, let's start from the basic. These are the general legislations what we have in the country. And almost all legislations of such nature deal with the situation in one way or the other. But we also have institutional rules. When I speak of institutional rules, we are talking about Chandigarh University, for instance. And we all hail from different colleges, different education institutions. Almost all institutions have certain rules of such nature, which protect the students, which protect women from such activities. Now, the question is to what extent those rules and those rules are implemented. We have seen, we have heard of instances in the past wherein the university took strict action against professors who were found to be doing such mischievous activities. We have also seen events in the past wherein the authorities took very strict measures against people who are doing these kind of activities. But you see, when an issue like Chandigarh University issue happens, which entailed a mass protest, it generally boils down to the entire act of deniability from the university's end.
Yes.
Because stakes are such, reputation is such. But all in all, yes, universities also prescribe, every institution also prescribe certain rules with respect to safeguarding women, safeguarding people, insofar as these kind of mischievous activities are concerned.
So there's another question in my mind. I'm curious to know that when a woman is used as an object, as a honey trap, especially in the defense services, will it be considered as an option, objectifying a woman?
No, see, the question is not as simple as it sounds. It depends a lot on the fact and circumstances. Right. Now, what does one mean when we use the phrase, when we use the word honey trap? Right. I get my understanding of the concept of honey trapping from random books we read, small news what we read. Of course, when it comes to defense sector, these things are not, these things are never the headline news, and rightly so. We understand the sentiment. But when we speak of honey trapping, we mean that where one set of people use women as an asset to extract information, or to keep the mouth shut, or to make a person not do something deliberately, right? Now the question is, who's doing this thing? What is the sentiment of the women? Is she also being a victim, or she's actively being an asset? So the question is not that simple. It depends on fact to fact issue. From what I've heard, I have not seen the defense rules. I've not seen the practice manuals. But casual conversations with people here and there, my friends here and there, tell me that they also have certain protocols so as to address these kind of situations, which involves setting up of internal committees, understanding what exactly has happened, and so on.
Exactly. So, Swati ma'am, I want to touch on another topic that is called marital rape. So this has been on a quite in the news, and the so-called status quo said that it doesn't even exist. So what's your opinion on that? It's something which is related to objectification of a woman or not? Ma'am?
Your voice is cracking. Could you, hello?
Hello. Yeah, ma'am. I said that I want to touch on another topic called marital rape. So the so-called status quo said that it doesn't even exist. It's against what you call a principle or institution of marriage. So will you consider it is existed as a concept or something that is going in a negative manner, or it's something that related to objectification of women?
So marital rape, if you ask me whether it exists as a concept, I think Mr. Seth would be in a better position to answer that, but it definitely exists, right? And there has been a lot of discussion and debate around it. Now we have moved from a university space to a very private space, right? In a private space, of course, it depends on the couple, if they bring it out, how the kind of discourse develops when the issue is brought out in public space, right? Marital rape as a concept, yes. If as a sociologist, if as a researcher, I would comment on it. It does exist. And I'm not too sure about the legal framework that operates around such a discourse. But when you think about women objectification and marital rape, as to like, these are not watertight containers, and these are, again, I wouldn't say that one leads to the other, right? It is not causal. I wouldn't say it's causal, and at the same time I wouldn't say it's in the watertight compartment, which are like two separate entities altogether. Marital rape, again, is about consent primarily. Secondary, yes, there are many contextual and social cultural factors that needs to be understood when we understand, when an individual tries to say, bring out this term in public discourse, out of the bedroom, out of their own marital home, etc., etc. Of course, there are a lot of mainstream, again, social media, movies, articles, op-ed, opinion pieces written about it, where there are discussions around it, and when a subject matter is brought out that it should be studied more closely, are women subjugated, are women, so it again becomes very women centric in my understanding. But is marital rape only women centric? Now there are certain kind of genre of cinemas and genre of audio video mediums that also brought out it is a gender thing and not really just entirely women thing. Again, coming back that, okay, this talk is more about women objectification, but when we talk about women objectification, of course, it's a very serious issue that needs to be tackled, that needs to be talked about more openly. But I think it's, again, more of a gender dynamic, and it is, when you talk about marital rape, it has a social cultural context to it, right? Again, I'm not saying that it's a very this region phenomena, it is a very Western phenomena, it is a very Eastern, it's not like a vis-a-vis thing, right? It's not like that, but it has a very strong ramification coming from the social and cultural forces. I wouldn't say religious, but social cultural for sure. Yeah.
Is it something because she's not confronting in public because of she's not financially independent, something related to that, because she accepted that she's subordinate to her husband and this will not come out in public because she wants to maintain that sacred institution of marriage, and she doesn't want to come out because she's particularly dependent on on her husband? Is that
Right.
one of the reasons? Can we say that?
Yes, potentially that could be potentially a very, very strong reason. It definitely has potential, but like in your question yourself, you said it that it could be kind of, it has a value kind of underpinning to it, right? That it's a social obligation, marriage is a sacred space, and once you make a complaint or once you bring out a public private issue as such, say about sex, about sexual relationship between a couple, when you bring that discussion out of the bedroom, out of your house, let's just say bedroom, not even the house, right? It does have a very strong underpinning, social cultural underpinning. So if we think of marriage as the sacred space where you're not supposed to go against your husband, that is you just clarified my point, actually. That is very cultural specific, right? So financial dependency, illiteracy, access to resources, access to education, access to digital interfaces, etc., etc. There are many causal factors that could potentially lead to such a case building. And finance is, of course, a very strong point. Research has pointed towards it time and over and again. Sociological studies, there has been economic studies, there has been psychological studies also, where women do say that access to resources and access to finance, and in today's time, even a mobile phone, a smartphone, if they don't have access to that, they do feel disempowered and they do feel a lot dependent on their partners, necessarily the husbands, right? The other, again, very strong reason, it's all cited by research. Of course, I don't have the papers at the back of my head right now, but there's strong research and you could just do a simple search. The second reason is when you have a child in the marriage, right? So again, no expert in law or legal framework around it, but these two reasons do come out as very strong reasons where cases of marital rape are not talked about much. Even if there's a problem existing within a certain household, it's not really brought out to the public space. Yeah.
Exactly, ma'am. So what's been a court position on this?
You see, so let us firstly understand what we mean by marital rape, right? We don't have to go in the intricacies of law. That is not what we're discussing over here. We can reserve that for some other day. Marital rape is essentially an act of raping someone within the institution of marriage, right? What is rape? Having sexual intercourse without the other person's consent, plain and simple, right? Now, let me first address the legal position, then I'll have some other comments. So last year, or maybe it was earlier this year, one petition was filed before the Honorable Delhi High Court with respect to inclusion of the concept of marital rape within the provisions of rape under Indian Penal Code. The matter was being heard by two judges of the Honorable High Court, Justice Rajiv Shagdar and Justice Hari Shankar. I used to be in the same courtroom when this matter was being heard. I used to wait for my matter, so I was privy to the arguments which were being led by everyone in this thing. Very recently, the judgment came out, and the judges could not arrive at a consensus. One judge was of the opinion that we are not legislators. We're not legislators. We cannot enact new law, right? And the other judge was like, no, we have to understand. We have to give sanctity to this entire concept of marital rape, which is to a very great extent a societal evil. Because there was no consensus between the judges, now the matter has been referred to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will give its verdict whenever it has to give the verdict, insofar as marital rape with respect to Indian Penal Code is concerned. But 4 days back, the Honorable Supreme Court pronounced a very recent judgment with respect to this medical termination of pregnancy. This was in the news, you would have read it. In that judgment, the court has recognized the concept of marital rape, but the recognition of concept of marital rape is only towards the medical termination of pregnancy and not Indian Penal Code. So yes, to a certain extent, recognition is there, but not the recognition which we are talking about at this stage. Yes, of course, rape can have consequences, which is pregnancy. So insofar as pregnancy is concerned, Supreme Court in the recent judgment has very recently protected the women. But insofar as punishing the person who has raped the other person, that has yet to be decided by the Honorable Supreme Court. Now you see, the problem is that the act of rape, although we get to see in the news on a frequent basis, and we have in the recent past we have had some very disgusting events of sexual misconduct, of rape happening. But you will understand and you will appreciate that these kinds of crimes mostly remain behind the veil. Most people wouldn't be comfortable discussing these kind of crimes because of obvious reasons. It affects the dignity of a woman, right? So people won't be eager to discuss these kind of things. And as Swati ji was pointing out, I have to agree with her that within the institution of marriage, the burden becomes all the more bigger, because one wants to safeguard the institution of marriage. So these kind of things very rarely go beyond the four walls of the bedroom or the four walls of wherever the issue took place. What I'm happy about is that we are very slowly and gradually seeing a progression of the laws. What I pointed out at the first instance was that the case was going on before the Honorable Delhi High Court. The Delhi High Court could not arrive at a consensus. The matter is now referred to the Supreme Court. Very recently, this week itself, the Honorable Supreme Court has recognized the concept of marital rape, but in a limited fashion. Limited to the extent of termination of pregnancy. So we do see a change in the legal regime. Do I see any law being passed in recently? I don't think there's anything before the parliament, or there's any bill before the parliament for being passing. So there's a deficit insofar as the statute law is concerned, the legislative law is concerned. But we do see the courts being proactive the way they are always. Certain changes are taking place. And I'm sure that in the foreseeable future, we will have some clarity on this issue. Of course, when we speak of clarity, we are talking about progressive clarity, not a regressive clarity, wherein Supreme Court will take care of societal evil, which is being prevalent in the society. And given the sensitivity of the societal evil, many people won't be willing to discuss this thing out there in the open. So that is at the moment the legal regime.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Well, there has been a comment recently that sexually objectifying women leads to women objectify themselves. So what exactly does that mean? Is it something when we say we objectify women, does that leave a sort of say psychological anxiety among the women in the long run?
It would definitely have some kind of impression. It would, like I begin the first question when you asked what is understood by women objectification. And I said that it's not like a one-off event that would lead an impression, right? It's a series of events. Of course, again, to correct myself, one-off event if it's a strong incident that's involved, commenting on a certain individual. If you say women, and it would definitely have certain kind of negative connotation to it, right? It would have a certain ramification. It would negatively influence whether it's one's self-esteem, whether it's one's confidence. Again, we are assuming these factors outside of what that individual is actually experiencing. I am commenting on this as an external source of being, right? In my own personal experience, I've not had an interaction with an individual who identify herself or himself as being objectified. But from my understanding of social media, of popular discourse, I would say, yes, objectification of any individual would lead to a negative effect on how they look at themselves. Now, when you say that women objectification leads to women objectifying themselves, I would disagree with that. Yes, it would affect women on how they dress up, for instance. I'm taking dressing up as a layman example because that has been in news, and that has been as the central part of a lot of discussions when it comes to music videos, when it comes to rape cases, when it comes to women loitering out of their homes in the evening. And the first comment that's made is the timing of the day and the dress up of that person, right? Why was that woman alone? Why was that person wearing a certain XYZ thing? And a very small section of the society who is kind of in a very sarcastic way called the woke part of the society has been addressing this like with face on, like with their horns completely out, and they're saying we will wear what we wear and we will go out the time we find whatever suits us, right? But that we have to remind ourselves that's a very small section of the society that is also very much concentrated in few parts of our country. I would again dare to go ahead and say that it's very urbanish in its outlook and it's very metropolitan in its perspective. But even in urbanish and metropolitan spaces, it's only handful. So how do these women, again, who have experienced, who have undergone this process of objectification, do they objectify themselves? They definitely see themselves or perceive themselves as someone, say, for instance, if I'm wearing certain thing, if that provokes XYZ, it could be a defense mechanism where they do continue to wear certain things which provokes or which gathers a lot of attention and reaction, right? But this is not done in the sense to be malicious, but it is done in the sense of making that point that you own up that space as much. Say if it's a public street, you own up that space and you have the right to exercise your freedom or your liberty or whatever, wearing, etc., so it's kind of to reassert your position in that domain.
You talked about the dressing example. I just want to say that majority of times the moral policing is being done by the woman, not by the man. So, for example, these so-called aunties on the colony. So, what do you want to say about them? It is something. I think, if I'm not wrong, it's called patriarchal bargain, I think.
I wouldn't want to say anything to them. As a sociologist and from whatever limited number of years of experience I've had in the field, my major field work has been always in urban spaces and not so much in, say, towns or rural spaces. And recently, I'm into this project where we are looking at self-help groups, and it's got more to do with towns and small spaces, rural spaces, rather, agrarian spaces. And yes, if there's a there was this case where a child, I wouldn't call her a child, she was 12-year-old, right? And she had a lot of male friends. And her mother would go out and say that she's always playing with boys, she's never playing with girls, etc., etc. And she would always, and this girl was also in Western dressing. Now this is, you have to keep in mind that this is a rural setup, it's not even a town, it's a small village. And she would rather see these videos at YouTube, I don't know how to see, I mean, she accessed all those videos and she wants to wear those things. She would ask her father to get those things from the city when he's traveling back, etc., etc. And her mother would be like, no, I cannot let her wear all this because she's always playing with these boys in the village, and it would lead to bad impression. And of course, early marriage is also there somewhere in the back of the head, right? So yes, you're absolutely right. Women, a lot of these opinions, a lot of these say model breaking ground paths are laid by women. A lot of this judgment comes from women also, where policing and controlling is of course the main motivation. But having said that, I also feel that the women who are these police bearers, who are the hands of the police in certain scenario, they have also experienced and undergone a certain circumstance, a certain situation in their lives, which has led them to think about this, which has been their social conditioning, a very strong part of the social conditioning. So you cannot expect XYZ generation to suddenly be more open. I wouldn't say fashionable, that's a wrong term. I wouldn't say forward, again, that's a wrong term if you think of it in a very contextual setup. But for them to understand the gap between them and maybe their daughters and their younger sisters, right? So again, no comments to the aunties of the neighborhood. And there's this very, very interesting work done by Shilpa Phadke, Why Loiter, right? Who talked about women. It's an old book, somewhere in 2000s. I don't remember, 2001, 2002. But she made a very groundbreaking, breaking kind of statements in those books, where women who wandered out after say 6 or 7 in the evening, right? It was their apartment women, aunties, and neighborhood watchers and police watchers who would comment that these women are coming back late and why. And there was a lot of retaliation, but a very subtle form of retaliation, not like really the protest that's happening everywhere where women issues are being talked about. But yes, I think I've conveyed my point. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Equipped with that knowledge.
so my question is to is that women are not comfortable in coming to the police station. For example, there's sort of trust deficit when it comes to police and when it comes to women. So what's the reason behind this trust deficit? What exactly is they are not confronting the sexual crimes that's been happening against a woman?
So I feel the need to add something to what you asked Swati ji, the objectification of women, etc. Sometime back, I was reading this book, No Country for Women, by Taslima Narseen. And there was one chapter in the book which said that many a times in a society, women are unable to get out of their of the evils what they are facing. It could be in any form whatsoever, because of the lack of support of women themselves. The gravity is so strong that one person can't get out of the whole thing. And that is the exact sentiment which came to my mind when you spoke of if a girl goes out having friends, the ladies in the colony, they'll pass critiques, etc. So it's something like that one person is wanting to shake the societal construct, but the societal construct is so strong that the majoritarian view pulls them back. But at the same time, that is exactly where the power of the society lies. If you observe and if you appreciate whatever has happened in Chandigarh, if you observe and appreciate whatever is happening right now in Iran, it is a perfect exemplification of what a collective action can do and how a collective action can bring a societal change. Now, going back to your question, I am adopting the same logic, the same ideology, right? Uh, if it's a sexual crime against an individual, right? it breaks your heart. It punches your heart because you are at the suffering end. And of course, the victim, it's very difficult for the victim to share those details with the support mechanism. When I say support mechanism, it depends where you are. It could be your family, it could be your teachers, it could be your school institution, it could be a college institution. But you see, without the help of these bodies, these institutions, be it your family, be it your parents, be it your college authorities, etc., there's only so little you can do, and there's only so far you can go without their backing. So when these kind of activities happen to you, when you are subjected to a crime such as what we're discussing right now, the biggest the most imperative thing a person is expected to do is muster the courage and seek help. You may eventually seek help of the police, or you may eventually seek help of the courts. But to arrive at that status, you need to go to the first point of institution, be it family, be it parents. Now, from the limited news, what we have read, what we have seen about the whole Chandigarh University issue, is that not only there's a lack of deficit of trust, the phrase which you were using, it appears that there's lack of accountability from the university's side as well. Right? The university is not taking proactive steps. That is what they're saying in the news. And there are allegations here and there everywhere that the university is bribing the officers so as to suppress this news. But you see, that is the beauty of collective action. There's a reason that we are seeing so many women on the street, so many students on the street asking for justice. In this case, justice is not a magical concept. It's not a very ideological concept. In this case, justice is something which is within the reasonable foresight. That listen, whosoever the perpetrators are, they should be duly investigated. If they are found guilty, they should be behind the bars and corrective action should take place. But keeping in mind what Taslima Narseen said, that listen, societal change has to happen from within, right? One person can't bring about the change. One person can only motivate. It is imperative for everyone to, collectively move forward. And we are seeing good examples of what collective and societal change can do. Chandigarh University protest is one example. Iran is another example, and so on. So yes, police will do the necessary thing. The courts will do the necessary thing. But before you go there, you have to win the trust of your support mechanism, parents, teachers, whatever support mechanism you may have. That is important.
So probably they don't seek help because there has been what is called victimization of victims. That's one of the reasons they don't seek help.
Yes, I agree with you. Victim blaming or victim shaming is a prevailing practice, not just in India, but everywhere, right? But you see, the concept is not as simple as it sounds. One has to see the concept of victim blaming with a lens of rationality, right? Now, if I'm sleeping at my home with my doors unlocked, and if I get robbed, I can't play the victim blaming card, right? Because I'm inflicting that injury because of my own negligence. But in this case, what we're discussing, the Chandigarh issue, this is not the same as the example which I said, sleeping with my doors open. It is wherein women were minding their own business. Students were minding their own business. They were doing things in their private domain, right? And someone with an absolute malicious intention videographed them, right? In this case, I'm very sorry, but I do not see the lens of victim blaming. But because the concept is so prevailing in our society, victim blaming, at times when you're introspecting these things, when you are undergoing such a trauma, and when you're introspecting those things, the lens of victim blaming does come into the picture. And a person is bound to, draw the conclusion that, listen, if I tell my parents, if I tell my support mechanism that this is what has happened with me, they'll only blame me. So Yes, as I was telling you earlier, that one thing what we must all do is muster the courage to seek out help. It is also incumbent upon the society to lend a helping hand. Victim blaming only caters to your frustration, it only caters to your anxiety. It does no good to the person who is undergoing the trauma, who is undergoing the pain. Assuming that the person who is the victim was actually negligent, let us for a second assume that the person's negligence was involved. It still doesn't give, right to the other person to exploit that negligence. Number one. Number two, assuming there's negligence, that does not mean that we can cut away that person from our lives. Towards the end of the day, we live in a society. We are not living in isolation from each other, right? And that is what we all do. We always lend a helping hand. So it is incumbent upon the society also to shackle the whole idea of victim blaming. Of course, be cautious. I'm not asking everyone to be negligent. One has to be cautious, but one has to also be sympathetic and lend a helping hand. So the duty to cater to these kind of problems is both ways, at the victim's end and at the societal end.
Okay. Now, the question is that can we say that this whole incident, for example, women objectification or commodification, the brunt of this is being facing by the rural women more as compared to urban women. For example, there was an incident called Me Too movement, where these women come out in the open.
Yeah.
Okay, am I audible? Okay. So, ma'am, the point is that the whole objectification of this woman, the sexual offenses, the brunt of this is being facing more by a rural woman as compared to urban women. For example, there was a movement called the Me Too movement, where the urban women come out in the open to express their grievances, whereas there is no mechanism or platform that is being provided to a rural woman. So, what's your take on this?
See, you're talking about the urban-rural divide primarily here, and you're talking about how women see women objectification, or whether they do have recourse to any. See, Me Too movement is not a platform, and it was not generated by, say, a group or an organization. It was so organic and spontaneous, and it just caught on across cultures, across regions, across various time periods. So it was not just one generation of women who were coming out with, say, certain accusations, allegations, but there were also women across generations who could resonate with this movement, right? And it was a social media based movement. So it had a very strong digital currency, which was, of course, missing if we just talk about Indian rural parts, Indian villages. Of course, we have Digital India, we have all those missions going on, but we do know that at ground level, when research is happening, the digitization, so-called digitization, is happening only in certain interfaces, and that too very sporadically and not very smoothly across. So yes, this is a very good question actually, because when Mr. Udit Seth was talking about whether you know how women might be comfortable, not be comfortable accessing, or whether police stations or XYZ kind of recourse. One is about awareness, right? A lot of women, of course, in urban cities, even in rural counterparts, might have awareness that if a certain such an incident happens, I do have the option of making a complaint. It's an act which is violating my right, or it's violating my dignity, so I could make a complaint. So absence of this awareness is very important, is like the crucial factor which decides whether a movement of such nature, of such momentum, like a Me Too movement, can gather up. So in villages, I'm just talking about specifically about rural women, yeah. I do not have expertise working with rural women in this regard, but general understanding and with whatever little research I've studied, it is that women do not have awareness. Let me go back to your question of marital rape. What amounts to marital rape? Some would think that this is how it is, you know. It's unquestionable if your partner, if your husband makes a certain XYZ demand, however unreasonable, however irrelevant, it's the wife's duty to carry it forward, however way she can, right? Whichever way she can, she would fulfill that demand. So the idea or awareness of such a concept is absolutely zilch, absolutely missing. So when a certain kind of act happens, whether it's rape, whether it's violence against bodily violence against a woman, whether it's a social kind of conflict happening against a woman, so whether it's dowry, whether it's undistributed work, whether it's unpaid labor, whether it's domestic labor, which includes violence, which includes exploitation of certain nature, etc., etc. And there's so many of such things unraveling, right? The women think this is how it is. Now, this is how it is mentality would stop them in understanding that this could be a legal, a social, a problem of a nature which can be made a complaint of, and I could make a complaint, I could raise a complaint against XYZ in my own household, right? So Me Too movement cannot happen when awareness is missing. Me Too movement or any movement of such nature cannot happen when digital access is not given to women. So when awareness is not there, when access to resources is not there, when they do not have a smartphone, the only thing that they have is an Aadhaar card, and that too because they have to access the public distribution system, etc., etc. There is no way that such a kind of momentum or such a kind of solidarity kind of organically happen. Now, interestingly, when I look at self-help groups, now these are all women groups, as we would know, but the main purpose of which is for financial access to resources and also to find employment, generate small-time employment for women, to make them aware, to give them access to training and resources. But if you again go, and there's again a lot of evidence out there, if you go and look at that evidence closely, most of the self-help groups are also handled by one or two women in the entire village, right? And it's not women from every household. So you have women from every household enrolled in the group, but there's zero awareness of what is this group about. They all know that we might get a job and we might get some money, but how is this money coming? What is this money for? What is this job about? Nothing, right? There's no information. So when there's such a big lacuna, when there's such a big gap in information, you cannot really expect women to be self-aware, aware of their rights, aware of recourses to solution. So the legal apparatus is useless in such a nature. So yeah.
So regarding this point of rural and urban divide, there has been a comment by the senior advocate that though there is a National Legal Service Authority Act, it's on paper, but it's not applicable on ground. For example, rural women don't have access to a justice. And as we know, justice itself is a luxury. So what do you want to say about this, sir?
You see, so we understand and we acknowledge that there's a rural-urban divide, right? I consider three of us in a privileged platform that we are aware of our rights, we are aware of our duties, and to a great extent, we know what to do if someone infringes upon right. Even if we do not know, we at least are possessed with the power of getting all this information by a single hello Google, hey Siri. It's that easy for us, right? Education has led us to where we are right now. As Swatiji was rightly pointing out, yes, rural sector needs a lot of growth. Because in the rural sector, people are unaware of their rights. They do not know that this is their right and this is how it is to be enforced. And Swatiji gave a very good example. She was giving an example of that a woman feels that it is her solemn duty to accede to whatever the husband is asking for, irrespective of the fact that the demands of the husband is obnoxious. How do we cater to that? If we look at any developing economy vis-a-vis developed economy, insofar as access to justice is concerned, education plays a big role. Now, just because we have a body, a statutory body, which is meant to safeguard the interests of the people, the body would be without legs if people don't go there and seek help. But then again, can you push people to go to one particular body to seek help? if we're talking about a marital rape or an ordinary rape, can we push someone that, listen, you please go to the police station? We can't really do that. We can motivate people. We can't push people. Some time back, I was in Uber. This story is based purely on hearsay. I have no personal knowledge of it. I was in Uber, and this driver was driving the car, and I was in my uniform. I was in my lawyer's clothes. I left the High Court and I was going back to my office. And the person very politely said, "Sir, आप वकील हैं? Are you an advocate?" Yes, I'm an advocate. Sir, so I have to ask you something. Right. A part of me was thinking, "Arey, again, I have to give unsolicited or uninformed advice." Another part of me was like, no, a person is reaching out for help. At least as a responsible citizen, it is my duty to help him. So I said, "Yes, boss. What do you want? What happened to you?" "Sir, I went to my village." That's what he's telling me. That, "Sir, I went to my village and I got beaten up." I said, "Who beat you?" He said, "This group of women came and they beat me black and blue. So I want to ask you what I can do." I said, "If you don't mind me asking, what did you do?" Of course, you would have done something. People won't just hit you, right? It's not a movie. He said, "No, I slept with my neighbor's wife. So my neighbor's wife, they complained to the panchayat, and all the women came and they hit me. And because of this, my eye is bruised, my leg is bruised, etc., etc. What can I do?" I ridiculed him. I'll be very honest. I ridiculed him and I said, "Listen, if you do these things, you can't really expect people to take you to the temple and give you blessings. That's not how the society works. If you do like this, consequences will follow." But what impressed me was, this was my pinhole insight in the rural workings. It impressed me to know that the woman had the power or the courage to go to the wife, to go to the panchayat, seek help. Immediately after that, a collective action took place, wherein these people took the law in their hands and they beat this person black and blue. There's no court system involved. To the best of my knowledge, there was no police system involved. But it was good enough to jolt that person. Is there. The legal service authority is there. At the same time, people also have their internal societal setups to resolve these problems. In this example, which I just took, was it involved beating the person black and blue. At this stage, there is no intersection between the law and the societal norm. The intersection is not there because of lack of understanding, lack of education, etc. And these two things have to walk hand in hand for improvement. One of the reasons because of which people in the rural sectors are not going for enforcement before the courts are to take place over some time. We have to sensitize people, we have to empower the institutions, and it will benefit the entire society. Yes, the fight to minimize and decrease the gap between the urban sector and the rural sector is an ongoing fight. It's not as if we'll attain that that equilibrium in the next 1 or 2 years. It's a long-lasting fight. So yes, it will happen. We have to be proactive in our approach, and as educated people, it is our duty. It is incumbent upon us, to drive this change. I really hope that we are not one of those people that our government didn't do these things. As member of the civilized society, we also have to contribute and we have to give our 2 cents so as to drive that institutional change, to drive that societal change.
Exactly. Especially this role of bureaucracy has to be there, sir. Their role needs to be there the role of bureaucracy needs to be there to educate the rural woman.
Yes, I agree.
Ma'am, on a closing comments, how do you see this whole situation? Can we conclude that it is the Western influence over the Indian civilization that we are seeing this woman objectification?
Absolutely not. We cannot conclude that this as influence of certain civilization, as influence of XYZ. This is the era of tech, of digital. And when India is also heading in the direction of digitizing everything, all our lives, all our social movements is being digitized now. So it's not about urban rural. Even in rural, TikTok videos made in ways where there were geo has made inroad everywhere. So when you have an internet connection, when the smartphones are becoming cheaper day by day, where food is becoming expensive, but if everyone has smartphone and everyone has internet, sparse internet, and everybody's on social media, and fake news and anything that is provocative, that attracts our senses, is now being accessed, is now being downloaded, is now being viewed, interpreted in whichever way it wants to be interpreted. And so it's not a Western influence. It's not, I cannot say that this is why India is going this way or that way, because as this generation is imitating a lot of Western concepts, etc. It's all been indigenized. So it's not Eurocentric or Western centric. It's all been indigenized. The youth generation of today's India is smart enough to take up practices, to mold it, to invent practices, not just adapt to the existing practices, right? To invent practices and socially, culturally take them up in their daily lives. I think in this entire discussion, at the back of my head, I was thinking of Charles Horton Cooley, an American sociologist. So in Indian academia, we do refer to a lot of Western educators, a lot of Western thinkers. That is another topic for discussion for some other day probably. But yes, today I was thinking of C.H. Cooley, whose looking glass self-theory is very, very pertinent when you think about objectification, when you think about, you use the term commodification in certain questions that you asked me, commodification, objectification, and how we understand ourselves. And through this concept, he was saying that, it's basically a process through which individuals base their sense of looking at themselves, of their understanding of who they are, on the basis of how they believe the others view them. So it's your view of me, which I take as a central truth of how I understand how I am. And this is done consciously, unconsciously, at all levels. Of course, psychologists study this phenomena at much, various other ways. But in sociology, this is a very important concept. And this is taught in the very first semester at undergraduate level, where we try to understand how the society constructs your sense of identity and your sense of understanding of who you are, whether it's through norms, whether it's through your family, whether it's through your education. It could be anything, right? This is how a woman understands that, okay, my husband is the all being. And this is how a student understands that the university and my degree is everything, right? Lastly, I would not say that the accused, the alleged, the victim, I would not comment on that. But what is happening in this case is the accused, the alleged woman who's been accused of filming, of not filming. There's so many facts out there. Most of it has been molded to fit how the audience wants it, I think. That's been the news. That's been the style of news for very long now. But in this particular news, again, I would not comment on the facts, but because I do not know what are the facts. But the way the accused has been handled in this entire scenario is also very disturbing. So let's not just talk about if there are the 60 videos, that's the number that's been cited everywhere in the news articles. If that's there, it's very unfortunate. And of course, an educational space, a university space, a hostel space is where your dignity and everything should be safeguarded and you should feel protected. But we should also think of the accused here, right? Without her name being revealed, everything's been revealed about that person. And if somehow that does not add up, what is the effect that's going to have on psychological effect? I'm saying societal, it's all gone. She knows that her name's been there in mudslinging, and she probably knows that it's all over for her. But how would she bounce back if she wants to bounce back, if she wants to come back in the mainstream? How is that going to happen? So when we're talking about certain cases such as this, especially because it's going to be there on YouTube. I would really want to have a responsive, I would hope there's a responsive kind of argument and discussion around this. It should not be, the accused should also be given a fair chance in the end. Yeah, that's what I feel. Thank you.
With this example of how you perceive yourself based on the other's judgment. So I got this example of Snapchat dysmorphia. What it says that when you body shame someone, for example, you body shame a woman. So what she says that increases a certain level of anxiety, and that led to increase in the filters in the Snapchat. For example, she's not happy with her looks. So that's one of the major sources for creation of anxiety among the women nowadays. What do you call E.H. Kuhl's theory?
What is this theory? Are you
Yeah,
asking?
No, I'm just telling you is it something can be related with that Snapchat dysmorphia? For example, we based our identity based on the perception of others. So if some woman is being body shamed, so
Yeah.
she thinks she's not pretty enough. So she perceives that, okay, I'm not pretty enough. I'll use more over filters in the Instagram or WhatsApp or Snapchat. So will it create a sense of anxiety among the women?
Absolutely. It is the business of entire filter and the business of, taking those beautiful selfies right out of the bed look, the morning look, this look, that look, etc., etc. It's all coming from somewhere, right? And the main motivation behind this is a sense of validation that you're getting from the audience, from your peers, from XYZ audience on your social media platform. I think the motivation behind, so I've taught a course in social media, right? And this is to students from BTech background, in second year, fourth year, senior years, absolutely graduating batches. And the discussion that we have had around this is very fascinating, because most of them feel that filters do help them get that sense of validation, because that is an image they think they want to project, right? The filters business is doing good, and sense of validation, sense of anxiety, to be appreciated, all of those are the strong motivation factors behind this. Now, what is interesting to understand in this phenomena in social media's age is, whether you like it or not, right? Internet, like they say, is an ink. So your image is forever there, right? It's once it's there, it cannot be erased. So a lot of my students who made this very amazing comment that if I am on social media, I would like to be seen as who I am, but perhaps maybe a filter. What harm can that do, right? So that says a lot about our generation. That says a lot about social media users. So it's not just about anxiety. It's not just about objectification. It's about me understanding who I am based on your perception. That's actually at the core of it. Yeah.
And so, what solutions would you suggest, or your take on this social media crisis?
Which crisis are we talking about? We have 10 new crises every hour.
Especially when you talk about the body shaming, sir.
You see, so I remember when internet was young, at least in our country and in our lives, we used to have this software called LimeWire, right? So the theory, the funda of this software was P2P sharing. So if Parmeet has a file, I can access that file, I can get that file, etc. It's easy, simple, straightforward, beautiful concept. And the concept is as per the ideology of internet, that nothing is centralized, distributed. The flip side of this software was piracy and pornography, right? That people were pirating movies, people were pirating. There was porn all over the place. There was viruses and ransomware all over the place. The beauty of the software remained intact. Two sides of the same coin funda happened, right? I think the same is happening with social media. The origin of social media, when we trace it back from Orkut, from MySpace to Orkut to Facebook to Instagram, right? At least relevant to our generation. The intent was that we can share the important milestones of our lives. If there's a big event happening in our life, or if we are just casually going out for a meal, if we like the meal, take a picture. Nothing but digitization of our lives. The intention is plain and simple. Parmeet, if you are a close friend of mine, I can meet you on a day-to-day basis, but I want to know about you. I want to be in touch with you. and vice versa. Social media was bridging this gap. But the flip side of the coin is this vanity and sense of validation. That if I'm uploading a picture and if I'm not getting 500 likes, I can't sleep at night. If probably I have this filter, which will make me look in a particular fashion, I will garner 500 likes and I'll be able to sleep with a peace of mind. And to be very honest with you, I'm not very pleased with this flip side of the coin, right? I'm displeased in the same way as I was displeased with LimeWire, wherein the flip side of the coin was pornography, piracy, etc., etc. How do we change it? It's very difficult to change. The more we read about tech news and how the algorithm of TikTok, Insta Reels, etc. manipulate our lives, we are shortening our attention span. We are more and more going in the zone of vanity and the sense of validation. So it's a difficult problem to combat. It's an extremely difficult problem to combat. Of course, you and I, we have seen so many content on social media, which they don't have any basis per se. But in casual discussions, people accuse that, Are, you see TikTok and all the algorithms in China works differently, but TikTok's algorithm outside China works differently. On one side, they are showing motivational videos, and the other side, they are promoting vanity, right? These social media companies or these content providers, they are not in government hands. Government can decide where to build a road network, where to make a rail network based on the benefits for the society. Private companies, they want their profits. How do they earn their profits? By having more and more viewership. If we see the news holistically in the past 1.5, 2 years, we can see almost every government making sincere attempts to regulate social media companies in some way or the other. Content regulation in India, we have seen insofar as the Twitter dispute was concerned. Twitter issue was gaining new heights until last year, right? We see at least once every quarter in US, they're summoning the chief of some big tech company, be it Facebook or be it Google, insofar as content regulation is concerned. Sooner or later, content regulation will become a reality. But how do the balances scale, and in which favor they scale? That is something which you have to look forward to. What can be our input and our contribution to a great extent spread awareness? What Parmeet, exactly what you're doing right now with this video, you're intending to spread awareness, right? It's not a vanity video for you. It's a video for you to spread awareness. So spread awareness to the best possible of our means. Contribute in policy making so that we can balance these scales in a manner which not only favors these content private companies for profit maximization, but also cater to the interests of the larger societal benefit. It's a long shot. Don't get me wrong. I'm aware of what I'm saying. It's a long shot. But we have to take our baby steps, because as our External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jayashankar, in almost all his speeches say that Namaste, I belong to the land of 1.3 billion people. If collectively we all take these baby steps, I'm very sure the 1.3 billion baby steps will be nothing but a big tsunami wave. Right. So these are baby steps, and we have to progress in that dimension. We can be spreading knowledge and words through these videos, what you are doing. We could be scolding our Uber drivers if they act funny, or if they do nefarious activities. The possibilities are endless. But the idea is to support and be an important civilized member of our civilized society, which is growing further.
So thank you. So thanks, ma'am, for your input. Thanks for providing me your valuable time and being a tough day. So sorry for that. And thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.